Yeah, how do we do that? Resume recording.
Get my text, Colin.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure I totally understood.
All right. I was just, could we review homework first? Would you be okay if I went through that first?
Okay, is this homework from yesterday?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh no, Suzanne's like, oh God, the homework.
No, I did the homework. I was just going to say what was tripping me out. You know, you think your phone, you know, everybody knows their phone listens and all that. So yesterday, when we were in the middle of that, my Facebook pops up and asks me to be a friend with the lady that does the Village Assist. You know, what's her name?
Caitlin?
Yeah, so y'all were like talking about her, and next thing you know, it's like sending me a friend request to be friends with her. And then last night I was on Facebook and it was like suggesting that I be friends with Teddy's mom.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that a trip? Because you like mentioned her name, we're talking about her and all that, and then she like pops up, and then same with the Village lady. I'm like, that is weird.
They're listening.
Yep.
Big brother.
Anyway, I know they do, but that was just another moment of that they definitely do, you know?
Always listening. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, couldn't remember that was your mom's name. And I was like, I know that name. Who is that? And I like clicked on it and I was like, oh my gosh, we were just talking about her.
That's her. That's her. That's her.
Yeah. You look like her.
I do. That's funny. People say that. Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take it. No problem. Oh, thanks, Apple Watch. No problem. Do we need to text anyone? It's 9:02 to shake their cage.
I know Veronica's coming on because she texted me, but
yeah, in the face, I think you do. You're like, whatever. All right. Jeff is coming. He's going to be late, but he'll be here.
Okay.
He's always late.
Sierra says she's having some trouble, but she'll be back on in a sec.
I'm sorry, but
Shh.
So we can start though with the homework, which is great because that way, as people jump on, they can share. So 3 things, right? We had watch the Simon Sinek video and then complete your disc profile, and the last was the bucket list, but that's not due till Monday, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I'd like to get some feedback and what your thoughts were on the Simon Sinek video. What showed up for you in watching that?
You need to start with the why and work outwards. Start with your why instead of what you have to offer.
Okay. Lyle, go ahead. I know everybody jumped in at the same time.
Yeah. So no, I mean, that's exactly what I got, that I think in general, when we're marketing ourselves or products, we talk about the features, and you talk about, you know, how well it works, and, you know, I've got this much experience and that much experience, instead of saying, you know, coming from the heart, like, you know, I really want to help you get into this house, and this is, you know, what's important to me, and then explain, here's how I'm going to get there. And so that's what rang true for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily.
You talked a lot yesterday. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lyle.
No, I apologize. You just talked about yesterday a lot about my why for being in real estate, and I thought about that a lot, and that, you know, obviously reinforced that, and that's something that I had, you know, I thought about a lot about, well, I want to make more money, I want to have more flexibility, but why am I really doing this? What am I hoping to achieve by doing it? And that's a helpful thing to bear in mind as we run into sort of the frustrations of the day-to-day grind.
Absolutely. And you know, what I would encourage everyone is, and I know that you know, we'll ensure that you work with Brent is that you write that down, right? Some people that vision boards are a thing too, and bucket lists, and those are very important tools. But what is your why? Like, what do you plan for at the core of it, right? Beyond just, you know, material or things. I mean, you described it very well. It got real nuclear for you as far as what it looked like for serving your family. And so just keep digging with the question, right? My mom used to do an exercise with me when I felt like I wanted to quit pretty much anything in life. And she'd say, okay, so then what would happen? So what are you afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to fail. All right, well, what does that mean? That I can't do this. All right, well, what would happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? And you just keep digging. Why? And I had a guy too, when I was working in graphic design, he had a friend that used to press him. They went through this whole exercise of who are you? And say, well, I'm a husband. No, who are you? And they go through all these roles and titles that he is, and kind of trying to drill down and peel back the onion, if you will, to really get to who are you really and what is it you're really offering people, because that to me is the interesting story. And a lot of you shared a lot of that yesterday, and it was really fascinating. And I look forward to getting to know more about your stories. So thank you for sharing that, Lyle. Emily, were you going to share?
I was just going to say, I noticed we ended a little early, and I was like, this is a trick to see if I do my homework right now. And I did not do it immediately. I did it later in the evening, around like a little after 5, in that 5 o'clock range. And I was going through my emails. And anyway, I watched the video, and the why stuck with me. A thing in like my past world, in the music world, we always called that, what's your narrative? And learning how to just tell that narrative as, you know, quick and easy as you can. And just to follow that through real quick, I was like, okay, another thing they said is when you think about someone on phone roulette, you call them immediately. And I was going through the GNR newsletter, and there's a mortgage lender just advertising herself right there. And I wrote her immediately, and within 30 minutes, she told me she would send me some work.
Awesome.
So just like, and her question, it turned out that her daughter works in the music business. So it was like being able to tell a quick narrative, and I'm making the switch, and then it turned into something immediately. And I was like, oh gosh, that happens fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All those things, all those gifts and talents that you've used and that brought you to this point or to this day and to that conversation with people is leverage to your service in this, right? It doesn't really matter as much as how many years you're in the business, because you're not going to necessarily talk about how many years you've been selling real estate versus how many years you've been serving people. That to me is much more of the narrative and what people kind of really care about, and how the skills that you've used translate, or how you've specialized or you've perfected those skills that are going to help people in their pursuit of their goals. And you know, which I didn't just say buying or selling a house. So yeah, awesome. Veronica, anything stick out to you from that?
I'm sorry.
Did anything stick out to you? I guess you were you a part for the homework yesterday?
No, I wasn't aware of the homework yesterday. I don't know if I received the mail that has all of the documentation in it.
That's all good. That's all good. Yes, that is probably true. We're glad to have you on today, though.
Well, I'm glad to be here. There's a lot that I need to learn, and I'm excited about learning it. So
fantastic. Let's see. And who else is joining us here? Anyone else want to add to that as far as some for the video or their why? All right. Would you share about, would you be willing to share your disc profile, your what you noticed about your disc profile? Did anything surprise you? Did you find it accurate? And what are your top 2 letters? You might share that. You want me to call on you?
I feel like I talk too much, but
Go for it.
am I there?
You're there.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm still on my phone. I was an I, a capital I, and a lowercase s. Is that how they go? Like a capital letter and then a lowercase letter?
Well, we always, when you hear 2 letters, it's typically your most prevalent would be first, and then your second would be the.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I assume.
So
And I agree with that pretty much, I guess. I didn't read all about all of the other stuff. I kind of glanced at it, but I did read about the I and S. So I guess I do agree with that.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. Who else?
I'll go. I was an IC, which I think was relatively accurate. I mean, I think the 2 things were the I part. I think it was saying that you know, I'm can be fairly persuasive, and I work pretty well with others and kind of getting everybody on the same page. I can be collaborative. And then the C part, I do have kind of an attention to detail, or try to, and I'm a fairly structured person. And then on the negative side, it did say that when I'm under a lot of pressure, I can get a little bit aggressive and critical. And I don't like to admit it, but it's very true. So it was fairly accurate for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, I can identify very much with that. Stress management business, for sure. For sure. All right, who else? We all get to go. We all get to go. Zach Zola, did you do your homework?
I did. I did most of it, and then my son went bananas. I got the video and most of my bucket list done, but
Great. Good.
I'm trying to catch up on this disc thing actually right now.
All good. Emily, did you share about your disc?
It was on the money. I'm not sure if I'm reading it right, but it said, yeah, I'm very assertive, and I know that. Yeah, basically where things were the most totally on the money, and the least for me is, you know, things like structure and consistency and things like that. And yeah, no surprises there.
Gotcha. What is there anything that you found in there or saw of yourself that you thought this is an area that I need to be mindful of, that could challenge me in this business?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that attention to detail, and you know, and that's kind of been my like one fear the whole time. So that is where I'm really trying to zero in and go slowly, because I know I need that little extra there.
Yep. Yeah, and there's tools and resources, right, to kind of assist with that, as we talked about. And we're going to go through a little bit more today as we talk through buyers. Awesome. Sierra, did you take your disc, and would you be open to share what your letters were?
Yeah. So I had actually taken this a couple times. So when I went to the website, it took me to my results, which was interesting because I was a C when I took this. I don't know when I took it. It's been a while, but I took this again probably 6 months ago, and I was an S. So kind of interesting that it's changed. But I mean, I think it's accurate. I honestly can see myself a little bit in each one of them.
Yep.
But I guess depending on my mindset when I took the test originally, I was more of a C that day.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll serve you well. I think it's important too to keep your disc as part of sort of your self-awareness, right? And that skills that you knowing where your strengths and your areas of opportunity are rather than weakness. So yeah. Veronica, we'll share with the homework with you, and then I'll tell you one of them is that we'd like you to put together a bucket list of at least 30 items by Monday.
Okay.
So bucket list of 30 items by Monday, and then there's a video to watch, and you'll do a disc profile. Who else? Did anybody do phone roulette and make calls yesterday and win some ice cream that Andrea promised? Raise your hand if you're an ice cream winner. Yes, somebody is going to take that bet. Thank you, Emily. All right, well, I'm going to let her know. How did it go? I know you said the one about the lender. That was quick. Who else did you call?
Well, that was the only one. I'm just going to take one scoop today.
Absolutely. Okay, good. I'll make sure I'll let her know. Colin, for Colin and Lee, she promised ice cream to those that would play telephone roulette yesterday. So that's the deal there. So the game is on. Be careful what you're betting for because they're playing to win today. All right, cool. Today obviously is day 2, and we're going on buyers. So Colin and Lee will be leading you on buyers today, and I'm going to let them take the helm and go from there. Yesterday we ended a little early, and but everybody's blocked and knows that it could go till 4. So take as you need. Is there anything you need from me, Colin or Lee, before?
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you for your recap for everybody.
Excellent. And as we got off today, at the end of the day, we did takeaways, and so I'd like to do that again today, so people can share what their top takeaways were from the day. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you both. Appreciate y'all. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. All right, guys. Buyers. So chances are, and this is not across the board, but most new licensees tend to have a buyer before they have a listing. It just is the way it works. You work open houses for other agents. You can pick up unrepresented buyers there. It just is typically how it's going to happen. And one of the first things that everyone's instinct to do is just drop everything. You get a phone call and somebody says, hey, I want to see this house. And your first instinct is going to be, oh, of course, and you get the address and you print out the MLS sheet, you're just going to meet them there. No. So we call that being a Pop-Tart. And that is when you're going to just go be a door opener and you're going to pop in and let them see any house they want without having met with them and qualifying them. And remember, this is a two-way interview. You're interviewing them as well as they are interviewing you. You want to take the time to get to know your buyer. And there are people that don't respect our profession. They see us only as door openers, and we have to combat that and prove our value. And so we never want to go by that instinct of, oh, my first client business, I have to, it's easy to get wrapped up in that. But the key is to stay calm and know that the excitement is real, but that you want to set up an appointment to meet them at the office, ideally, or a neutral place. This is not just for safety, but it's also for professionalism. I've always preferred to meet with people at the office, but I've met people at coffee shops. I've met people at other places as well. We have an app called Forewarn. Everyone should have a login to Forewarn where you can verify somebody's phone number. And I recommend this as well. This isn't just for the ladies to, weed out stalkers or anything like that. This is also for the person who comes and tells you that they just won the lottery and you can see they've got 4 bankruptcies. So you know what you're dealing with on a financial situation as well. So forewarned is forearmed in the sense that getting a little bit of information about who you're working with is good for your safety, and it's also potentially good on not wasting a whole lot of your time. That doesn't mean someone that's had 4 bankruptcies hasn't been pre-approved for a loan and they've managed to recover, but you know you may have some lending challenges. The other thing we always want to make sure is that they have spoken to a lender before you start showing property. And so this is where you're going to have your initial buyer consultation, and you're going to explain the process to them. And during this consultation is when you do talk to them about getting in touch with a lender and getting their affairs in order. You know, it could be somebody just started a job, and it's going to be really tough for people to get a loan if they've only been at a job for 6 months. And this is all part of the education that the lender will be able to educate them on. It's not our job to educate them on whether they're going to qualify for a loan. That's the lender's job. We got to stay in our lane, as one of my favorite instructors, Robert Morris, likes to say. And so what we're there to do is to refer them to the other people that they need as part of the process. So I'm going to show you guys where to get your buyer consultation. They are updating this week, and I was supposed to have the new one by today, but unfortunately it's not complete yet. So we are updating this buyer presentation, but let me go ahead and pull it up. Okay, so everyone familiar with the market here? So you log in here, and under marketing, you see all this, and then under agent materials, presentations, village buyer presentation. So this is where you're going to get this, and then this is your editable bio page. So you want both of these. And how many of you have used the market to download any of these before? Has anybody? Veronica? Okay. So basically, you buy it. And I know that may seem counterintuitive, but that's just the way all of our marketing materials are set up, is that you purchase these things that are free downloads, but it's just the way the technology is set up for this. So you're going to buy it, and then check out, place your order, and then downloadable file. And there it is. It's going to be there for you to go through.
These knees.
So you're going to sit down, and obviously it's going to make sense for you guys to get familiar with this before you sit down with your prospective client. So like I said, some of this is going to be updated with a little bit more current information. Some of our stats in there from 2018. So we're trying to get our new numbers and everything updated. But there's going to be a little bit of information about Village and our history. This is the page where you're going to edit this. So that other one I showed you, the editable agent profile page, this is where you're going to put your about you, load up your headshot, your bio, all that will go here. And on that editable page, you can just insert it into this PDF. So all this will be updated.
We can save that and won't have to like do that every time, right?
Exactly. You save it and you keep it in a folder on your desktop or wherever you like to keep important stuff. I keep all my real estate stuff in, files for buyers, files for sellers. I tend to separate out all these kind of things in order just to keep it a little more organized. And I would suggest doing something similar. These are our partners. Okay, we seem to have a real problem, and we're going to touch on this again later about the trusted service provider thing. And I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but disclosing who our providers are is important. It doesn't mean they have to use them. And I think there's been a lot of confusion about the fact that just because we have a relationship with FNB and Rudy, and these two will be deleted, that it means people have to use them. They don't. They are people that we trust and we refer, but at the end of the day, it's up to your client, and you should usually recommend a choice of 3 and let them choose. But we have a trusted service providers form that still has to be signed because it's disclosing the relationship. It has nothing to do with whether they're using them or not. And so this is sort of the time to talk about that, is when you're going through this with them. If you're also going through your forms, this is disclosing the fact that we have a relationship with them. This is not saying they have to use them. There's a difference. Okay, the questionnaire. Lee and I, last class, I think these questions are great. I find them a little not enough, really, for me. So what I shared last time, I'm going to share in the chat again with you guys, that I have a buyer survey, and I do it in a Google form. And like I said, I'll send the link to this and put it in the chat. But I like to ask a lot more questions. I think those questions in our buyer thing are a really good starting off point. I tend to prefer to send this buyer survey before our first meeting, because then I already know a little bit more about them and their needs before we even sit down together. And you ask questions that are pretty basic, like, can I text that, is this a textable number, birthday, you currently working with a realtor, the ultimate question. Because a lot of times, especially buyers, first-time buyers, sometimes they don't even know. They don't remember signing something. I've had people say, well, I don't know if I'm working with a realtor or not. So then you kind of have to drill down and ask the question, well, did you sign a buyer's representation agreement? And then it might trigger and they'll be like, oh yeah, I did. Well, now they're represented by somebody else. You can't work with them unless they're going to terminate that relationship. So you always need to know if somebody is working with someone else, because you can't do that. You can't poach somebody else's client. How did you hear about me? This is a good thing for you to keep track of in a spreadsheet. Is at the end of the year, if you go back and look at where all your buyers and sellers came from, all your clients, it can be a really educational tool about what you're doing that's working and what's not. Say you've got a killer Instagram game and you're noticing that you're getting a lot of your people finding you through Instagram. Well, then that's working for you. And maybe you didn't get anybody from open houses. That would seem unlikely, but it may be that that's where your strengths are. Maybe you need to fine tune your open house techniques in order to get more action from there. But it's very valuable to find out how people get to you. Reason for buying a home. This is usually going to tell you a lot about what you're in for. Who else will be involved in making the decision, and will they be making the move with you? Is Dad helping buy a house? Is Aunt Gladys buying a house for you? These are all things that you're going to need to know, because it could be that the person you're showing houses to isn't going to be the one you're writing the contract with. And that can get complicated if you don't know this stuff up front. Allergies. What websites and apps have you used in your search so far? And they're all going to say Zillow, and you're going to try not to roll your eyes and groan, but you will, I'm sure, inwardly. And then you're going to have to explain to them that Zillow does not have accurate data. And then what you're going to do is you're going to give them the link to your HomeSnap app for mobile, and which is going to be branded to you. So when you go inside the HomeSnap app, there is a place where it says invite clients. That link is key. And then you're also going to give them your Boomtown website. So your emilywarner.villagerealestate.com, you give them that website to search for houses, and then you're going to be able to track what they're looking at. What type of home would you consider? And a lot of times, you know, they're going to have a decent idea if they want a condo versus a single family home. In terms of location, what are some things you really want in your neighbors and surrounding area? The neighbors part, you got to be, we don't want to go into a fair housing thing here. So this probably, we need to qualify that you're not, more of what you want in your neighborhood is what this is supposed to say. Anyway, I don't know how that got there, but yes, what you want in your neighborhood, not neighbors. What are you expecting from your realtor? This is also going to help you if you don't have a disc profile of your client, which you won't most likely. It's going to give you a pretty good idea of where they are. Are they data-driven people? Are they touchy-feely, emotional people? What they expect from you, what their answer to this question is usually really good insight as to how their mind works and how they think. Where do you work? And how important is it for you to be close to where you work? Describe your ideal location, include school district if that's important. Does school district factor into your decision? And once again, for fair housing and all that, you do not recommend school districts. You recommend that they do their own research. And I always recommend that they don't just use greatschools.net, that they go and they visit the schools they are interested in person and take a tour. Now, I know during the pandemic, that's going to be a little more difficult, but let's pretend that we're out of the pandemic at this point. Always take the time to personally meet with the principal or get a tour of the school that you're interested in, because data is not the only indicator of what makes a good school. There's a vibe, there's all of that there, and parents need to be able to see that in person. How many bedrooms do you need? What size home do you need? What type of home do you prefer? New construction, or, you know, any of these different kinds of, you know, fixer-uppers, whatever, price range. Have you been pre-approved, or will you be paying cash? This will also tell you how far along they are in the process. If pre-approved, with whom? How much do you plan to provide for down payment and closing costs? Do you currently rent or own? If renting, when does your lease expire? If you own, do you need to sell it before you buy? Ideally, yeah, and you get a double-ended deal. You get to sell their house and help them buy a new one. That would be awesome, but you never know. This is why we ask. What's your time frame to move into your new home? And then I always have a cooler in the back of my car if somebody's going to be riding with me, which obviously in the pandemic you won't be, but back in the days where I had people relocating or whatever and they were going to be riding with me, I always had their favorite snacks and stuff in the car. So anyway, back to our consultation. Those are the extra questions that I like to ask beyond these. And then now you're able to, especially if you've already had these questions answered before you're sitting down and going through this, then you're going to be able to know if they have gotten a pre-approved letter from a lender yet. And Connie and Roger are going to be here to talk to you guys at 11 about the difference between pre-qualification, pre-approval, and what that looks like. So yes, so you walk them through the process of getting financing in order first, and then you start searching. You can set up auto notifies and RealTracs. Hopefully all of you guys have taken some of the basic RealTracs classes now, and you know how to set up an auto notify. Has everybody, I want to get can I get a show of hands of how many people have, good, Zach? All right. Okay, so you can talk through what their search is going to be, set them up with an auto notify. You're going to get them registered on your Boomtown so they can search for properties there. And same thing with HomeSnap. and then you go through the process of writing an offer. I tend to have the contracts there with me, and I leave them with them to look over so that they know what a purchase and sale agreement looks like. So I tend to have all of my paperwork there during this presentation. Then you go and you talk about what the inspection process is like. And then you're going to talk with them about getting to closing. And this says here, typically 40 to 60 days. A lot of times we're able to do this in 30. If they're paying cash, we can sometimes do it in 7 to 10. But we're going to go with a typical situation of somebody who's getting financing.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Home Snap and Boomtown.
Yep.
I keep hearing a lot about them. Isn't there like a training like every other month or something on Boomtown, or is there a class? Or what about Home Snap? Like I keep hearing about it, but I don't know anything about it.
Home Snap would be a class you take through RealTracks.
Okay. I've done some RealTrack stuff, but I didn't know. Okay, so you do that through RealTracks. Okay.
And it's an app that you download.
Yep, I think I've downloaded it. I just don't know anything about it.
Play around with it. It's pretty great. It's also a way for you to look up the agent on the other side of a deal you might be working. It's very handy. But most importantly, you want your clients, when they're out looking at property and they see a for sale sign and they want to pull it up on HomeSnap, you want it to come to you. They'll be able to send you a direct message saying, hey, Suzanne, look what I just saw.
So HomeSnap and Boomtown are kind of the same concept?
Well, one is more, while Boomtown does have a mobile option, HomeSnap is connected with RealTracks here, and it has GPS where you can be driving in front of a property and it can pull it up for you.
Okay.
And so
I'll just tell everybody too, if you haven't done the RealTracks classes, you don't have to be visible on them. You can even mute it. They let you record them all. I mean, a couple of them I've had to jump off with my kids, and so I've recorded them. And so you can save them if you need to go back and watch them or rewatch them and digest it again or whatever. So I took like 5 last week, but it's good. So you can just, because it is a lot of information. So you can go back and rewatch it and everything. So you don't have to like do it again to do it. You can record it so you'll have the info. So FYI.
That's great.
Everything's on Zoom right now. You don't get credit. I think there's a few every now and then you get credit for, but you don't get credit for them. They're just for information, but they offer them like all the time. So you can record them, FYI. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So after you've talked them through sort of what the basic 5 steps are, this is, once again, this is all information that is currently being updated so that they have an idea of how much buying power they have in our market. You probably recognize some of these from Zach's sales meeting. And this is going to talk a little bit about mortgage rates and the 1%, 10% buying power of the 1% interest rate. And with interest rates so low right now, that's great for buyers.
Hey, Colin.
Yeah.
You mentioned going through before, like this is the part where you'll explain the inspection process. I can't recall, is there a different time where you're going to go by and explain almost like you're delivering this buyer presentation in the sense that if they're going to understand or be taught that piece or that component?
I'm not sure that I'm following. So you're asking, is this the only time we're going to talk about inspection?
Well, or these pieces or components of how you're describing it would be how they demonstrate that or share that. If there was anything else regarding, that's the one that stood out to me of, you mentioned going through the inspection process and how that works is, I didn't know if now would be the appropriate time when you're sharing that with the buyer, like during your consultation that you talk about, okay, so at this stage, we're going to go through inspection and I'll be sharing different inspectors with you to hire an inspector. And then once we get that report, there's different inspections that you get. Is that something that we would cover as part of sharing this buyer presentation now? And I know I'm speaking real time as everybody's on here, but I was just curious if we'll come back to something like that, or if we want to direct them to watch the inspection class.
I find it's to keep it more general at this particular stage.
Yep.
When you are at the point of wanting to write a contract, I tend to get into a lot more detail about the inspection as we're going through the contract line by line, and we talk about the inspection process and how inspection contingencies work and all of that, but I don't go into that much detail at this stage.
Perfect. Great.
I think if an agent wanted to, they could, but I think it's going to a little bit.
And we have Brent too. Brent will be going a lot over a lot of this stuff kind of one-on-one as well. So
I think it's a great point though that you make in the sense of it's kind of like JumpStart. When you're meeting with a buyer on a consultation, obviously assessing have they bought or sold a home before, when did you do that, and how was your experience? Those are some of the initial questions when I sit down with a buyer or in my pre-consultation that I'm asking them on the phone. And I can't encourage enough to sit down and do a buyer consultation. Most people will grab the phone and somebody says, could you meet me at 123 Main? I just want to get in real quick. And you go out there and you show them the house and you leave the house and you're like, they got no value really from you, and you really didn't get the chance to put the fish on the hook.
That's being a Pop-Tart.
That's right. And so I just think be mindful to that person and how their experience was to that, and we will go through more of that. Thanks for that clarification. It's great to understand. You're wanting to give them a taste of these pieces, and the line that I often use is, I'll be navigating us through the best practices and process through all of these stages. So if you have questions as we go through today, but I'm just going to touch and highlight on a few of these to show you the steps and process. But I assure you, I will be at the front of the plane flying this thing, and my job is to help serve you drinks and make sure you're as comfortable as possible. But ultimately, you're going to be on the flight with me, and I'll let you know when it's time to stress and it's time to put the seatbelt on.
Okay.
Awesome. Yep.
So we've already discussed this briefly, and then where to search. So this is going to be where, if you haven't already had this discussion with your pre-survey or on the phone or whatever, that you're going to talk to them about HomeSnap and your village website that has the Boomtown attached to it. And so unlike other big platforms such as Zillow, Village Real Estate pulls listing data and statuses directly from the local MLS. So basically assuring them that if they're looking on our Village website, it is the most accurate data. And you can talk them through that. And if you've been playing with the HomeSnap app, you'll be able to show them that. I actually don't really recommend RealTrax Mobile. That's why we are kind of pushing HomeSnap, and I would like to see that addressed in our buyer thing more, but that's a discussion for another day. This addresses the Zestimates and how inaccurate they are. So we've given you some tools here to sort of combat the common thing. And this is, Zestimates tend to be going to come into play more with sellers than buyers, but the sellers are going to be the ones that are like, but my Zestimate says that I should be able to get X for my house. And once again, you're going to try not to laugh and roll your eyes. Okay, this is going to talk them through how to register on your Village website. It's not hard. You just have to give an email address and register an account, but this gives them some step-by-step process. And then pre-approval. This is going to talk them through in more detail. We had those 5 steps we were talking about earlier. So this is going to give them a little more detail about pre-approval and getting their financing in order. One thing that I find is a very commonly misunderstood thing about lending, and this is something Connie and Roger will talk on some more, is your credit score can be affected by paying off a loan. And I know everybody thinks, well, that's going to be a good thing, right? Well, when you're about to try and buy a house, you don't want to do anything that's going to affect your credit score. So not only, don't buy a car and don't, all these things, top 10 things to avoid when applying for a loan. making non-payroll deposits without first checking with your loan officer, co-signing a loan for anyone. These are all, you know, I think more obvious. The one that I feel like it gets missed a lot is paying off debt. You think that it's going to be positive, but it can make a hit on their credit report, and it can make or break sometimes if they're on a razor thin margin. It can make or break their ability to get a loan, and then you may have to wait several months for that to sort of recoup and show a positive impact. So if they're like, yeah, I just want to pay off these 3 credit cards, or I'm going to pay off my student loan before I buy this house, don't do anything sudden to your credit. And that even means positive things. So I would make sure that you sort of have that conversation with them about things that can affect your credit and your ability to get a loan. This is going to go through a little more detail about what's involved with making an offer. And like I said, I always have a copy of the purchase and sale agreement with them. I don't go through it line by line now, but I give it to them so that they can look over it later on their own. I sort of go over it as kind of like we were just saying about inspections. I go over it in a general sense, and I say, this is the standard purchase and sale agreement that we use. And I will leave this with you to look at, and I'm not going to read to you right now. But it gives them a chance to look it over on their own. And then when you guys are getting further down the process and you start thinking you're going to be ready to write an offer, that's when you're going to really go through it with them line by line.
And if they're interviewing agents, I guarantee you nobody else is doing this. So that's going to make you look really good if you're going through the contract in any form or fashion besides 5 minutes before you send it for signing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and that's the other thing, you know, a big part of the buyer consultation, as we've said repeatedly now, is unfortunate as it is, we do have to prove our value. And by going through and showing them everything that's involved with the buying process, we are able to prove our value and that we aren't just door openers. So it goes through negotiation, what happens when you have a contract, earnest money. A lot of people don't even know about earnest money. They don't necessarily understand it. I think explaining earnest money, you don't have to get into every little detail, but I do explain the concept of earnest money somewhat thoroughly here. Because I feel like that's something they need to understand before we ever make an offer on anything. The one thing most first-time buyers don't really understand is they get it back. If it closes and everything goes okay, it's like a deposit, and that it will be credited to you at closing. But yes, explaining the concept of earnest money and why it's held, I think is important to kind of get some clarity on pretty early. And then talking them through closings. I believe, it might be contracts day. I don't know if there's going to be, if Loy from Rudy Title is going to be talking in this JumpStart or not, but basically going through what happens at closing, reminding them that they need to bring their driver's license.
Brent takes them to Rudy Title, and they do a sample closing.
That's right.
They do a mock closing, so you'll be able to see what that piece looks like. And there's also a title class to learn more about title insurance, and you can watch that video that just happened a few weeks ago.
I was going to say, I think Lloyd just taught that last week, right?
He did.
So it's as fresh can be title class. So anyway, this goes through and explains a little bit about title insurance, closing costs, and Rudy has a calculator, and you know, NetSheets is for a different day, but basically, you know, if people want to have sort of a ballpark of what closing costs are going to be, Rudy Title has a calculator on their website that you can use. The 85% perfect home. Okay, this is going to be incredibly handy because as most people will tell you, is they have this perfect idea of the 100% perfect home, and they want to have this, they want to have this, they want to have this. Most of the time that's out of their budget. Most of the time what they want that's 100% perfect is just hard to find for most people. Not everyone, obviously, but in general terms. So getting people to sort of tweak their expectations a little bit about what's going to make it as good as possible with what's available and what's out there, then this is going to help you. So you're going to make a list of features and benefits of what they want in a home. And this sort of talks you through how you're going to use this sheet. And it can really help them get inside their own head. And one of the things that's great about Boomtown is that, say they've told you in your buyer consultation that they've been approved for a $500,000 house. Yet you notice in Boomtown that they haven't looked at a single house over 425. What does that tell you? They have very strong fears about going to the max of their budget. And it helps you calibrate your search to be more in line with where they really are, because sometimes they don't even verbalize these things. And so that's going to be something that can really help you data-wise to make sure you're really zeroing in on what your buyers really want, despite sometimes they may say, I want this, but they don't quite. Our job is to ask the right questions to draw out these things, but this is another way to sort of get inside their head to understand what's really important, what's a deal breaker.
And sometimes you have to, if they're stuck on, I want a house for $200,000 in East Nashville, which you know does not exist on this planet without tearing it down. Sometimes you have to take them and show them the dumps, and then all of a sudden there you want to spend $300,000. So don't get disappointed if you don't find any good properties. Sometimes you just have to show them what that money buys them in that area.
Yeah, running a CMA for them in a situation like that as well, before you go and start looking at too many dumps, because that's, time is money. Showing them what is available in that price range can sometimes be, whoa, okay, I didn't realize. So use your CMA and RealTrax as your friend as well. And the cloud CMA makes it real pretty. So if you use the cloud CMA versus the regular CMA, it looks more impressive. So buyer's determination of value. So we've got price, condition, and location. Now, which of these can we change? If it's a seller, they can change the condition and they can change the price. You can't change the location. So you've got to find the best of all three. And you can negotiate price. You can plan to renovate if the condition isn't to your liking, but you can't change the location. So having them understand how value is assigned to properties. And, value is what the market is willing to pay. It's not what Zillow says. So get off the estimates. And then this is an appendix of terms, which I find is really helpful, especially for first-time buyers. So this is a little real estate glossary for them to have to take home. And all this will be in a nice folder, ideally. We've got Village pocket folders and stuff, and your business card. It's gonna have a little slot for your business card. And like I said, I go ahead and I put the purchase and sale agreement in there for them, a blank one. And I download also our other buyers forms, which we'll get into in a minute. But how are we on time? Do we want to take a break at 10 for about 5 minutes?
Is Connie and Roger coming on at 11 or?
You're coming on at 11, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. All right, so anyway, so we've done this and you have left them with this and the appropriate contracts, and we'll go into what those contracts are in a minute. And they should be in your folder. All buy-side contracts should be in the JumpStart agent folder. But So I like to leave them with, and ideally, if everything has gone well, you're going to walk away with at least the buyer representation agreement signed. And we'll go into that in more detail as well, but I'm just giving you this little heads up. I need to move this so I can get the chat. So I can give you the link to the,
Do you want me to share the link to the documents, Colin? Is that what you're getting?
no, that's okay. I was getting the link to my buyer survey. They just had more detailed questions if they wanted to use any of those. Okay, I've just put that on there. Okay, thanks, Ted. Ted's already also put the link to the drive.
And I will say, and Colin and Teddy's head might explode when I say this, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway. You know, if you have a buyer that maybe you just met, or I don't know, you don't really know, my suggestion is to get in front of them as fast as possible, and don't demand, this is the part they're going to hate, a pre-approval letter up front. Get in front of them, see if you click. Maybe I show them a couple of houses before I even get to the point. I mean, I obviously recommend, let's connect you with a lender. I have a great one. But you, A, don't want to tie yourself to that person if you don't really like them. And B, maybe they're not ready. Maybe they're ready in 6 months to buy something, and you find that out after you show a couple houses. But if you like demand a pre-approval letter up front, you might lose them. Now, I'm not saying go show them 30 houses without having this conversation. But I'm a little bit more liberal in the fact that I think if you get in front of them and kind of build rapport and then work that relationship in with the lender, and then maybe if it's not right now, but it's later, you've already built that connection, and they'll be more apt to call you back. Or as you follow up with them, it's not like, well, they wouldn't even talk to me unless I showed them this piece of paper. Maybe I'm not comfortable doing that right now or whatever. So that's my little tidbit. I know that's a little bit against the way you're supposed to do things, but I have found success in that. I had a client that ended up buying like 4 or 5 properties with me, and I know for a fact had I demanded that letter right away, we would have not even gone through that process. So it's a fine line, and you'll start to figure out who's a looky-loo, who's not serious, and who's kind of bullshitting you. You'll get that as you go along, but don't be so rigid up front, because you really want to kind of build your process and get to know people. So that's just my opinion on it.
I think that's a really great point. As much as we, you know, in an ideal world, we don't open a single door without a pre-approval letter in hand. Knowing your audience, just feeling out your client and really getting to know where they are, and meeting them where they are as much as possible. It's also our job to shepherd them along the process where we need them to be. But like you say, there's always a little bit of flexibility in certain situations, obviously not with others, but yes, I think there can be some grace, and you don't have to necessarily draw the hard line of, you know, absolutely not until you have this done. I think that's a really good point to make. Ted?
Yeah, may I add the couple things that Lee touched on that I think are really important, and I just wanted to give an additional point to is just come up with that practice and process. He mentioned this is as much about you hiring them as them hiring you. And I'm not really shy to say that, because I say, like, this is important. And why is it important that you sign a buyer's representation agreement and that we sit down and do a consultation? And I use this language. And if you're going to forget it, you can go back and watch the recordings, but I have found this to be successful. And that is, I am legally required to present coming soon and new properties to people that have a loyalty agreement, AKA a buyer's rep agreement, with me versus people that are customers. So customers versus clients, right? If you have a buyer's rep with me, then I am required by law on my license to present properties to those people first. If we don't have that, and I was to share things with you before sharing them with the others, then my license is at risk. I'm not following my fiduciary responsibility to people that are that have signed loyalty agreements with me. And you can call it a buyer's rep. Some people like loyalty agreement or other language with that, but that's where sitting down and having the consultation. Now, sometimes it doesn't happen, but it is a best practice to do such. But the questions, the key is in the questions, right, that you ask them. And we can share more and more of those. Of when you get a buyer on the phone, and they say, how much is that house? You don't answer with the price of the house, right? I see Lee shaking his head. How do you handle that call, Lee?
So especially if it's an online lead and they're just kind of random or whatever.
Sign call.
A sign call, I say, hey, let me pull that up really quick. While I'm pulling that up, blah, 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 blah. I see you have a 901 number. Are you from Memphis? Or you don't have a 615. Where are you from? How long have you lived here? Oh, I have the listing. Yes, it's available, showing at $225,000. Do you have any availability today or tomorrow to meet? Kind of leading them with those questions. And don't be so like, are you working with a realtor as the first question? Because that is kind of abrasive, and people are kind of like, oh, I don't even know what that means. So I just say, have you been working with anyone to show you houses? If they say yes or no, if it's no, I just follow it up with, okay, cool. I just don't want to step on anybody's toes. If they say yes, if they said, well, someone has shown me something, me personally, even if they say they have not signed something with someone, I will back off. Now, if they looked at houses last year with someone, that's a different scenario. If it was last week, if I smell agency of any kind, I just don't want to have that fight with the agent. I don't want to get involved. I'll ask a few more questions to see how deep that relationship is, but always ask that question, because you just don't, because I've made the mistake not to, gotten to the house, it's an online lead, and he says, okay, so how does my realtor make the offer on the property? And I'm like, what? Realtor?
And I've had that conversation with people in detail about agency, as far as same thing in open house. Are you working with a realtor? To me, it'd be like asking somebody, do you have auto insurance? I don't care if you do or you don't, you're saying yes. Or if you asked a new musician, do you have an agent? Yeah, who doesn't? They don't have no agent. So but people feel almost insecure to say no, other than ones that have done it before and they're trying to score a deal. So if they say, have you been out with a realtor, been looking before, or are you looking on your own to start the process? I give them that out, right? To say, are we just out like in an open house? What brings you out today? What motivates a move? If you find your right house, what is it going to have different than where you live now? And then that tends to get them talking about, oh, I'm in a rental, or, grandma's coming back to live with us and we need this. Or they say, we're looking for, and you heard me say this yesterday, oh, who is the we? And then it invites people to share, oh, it's my partner, it's my wife, it gets you more into the family dynamic than saying like, just who is this home for? Who's going to be enjoying this home? Or who do we need to take into consideration with all this? But very great points, Lee. Thank you for sharing that regarding that call. That is the best line is, hey, why pull that up? Let me get that information. And then you go straight to HomeSnap, even if it's my own listing, because I don't trust myself that I'm going to remember all those details. And meanwhile, I try to get their information. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Could you share that with me again? Get their full name. Right, this is Tom. Hey, Tom, may I get your last name? I also use the security thing, especially on open houses, as reason for that, to get some of that information. That's part of the price of poker and working with me, is that we're going to be transparent. We're going to share information. And then I'm a licensed realtor, and my job is to help protect both the consumers and the sellers as well. So don't be shy to say that. There's even a state now that's requiring pre-approval letters to look at any occupied property. I just read that. I think it is, I'll have to look. But so if it's becoming more customary and it's reasonable to require that type of documentation before we go look at occupied property. And it's a great way to help coach them through and get into that process, because I can't tell you, you'll only do it 12 times before you finally say enough of this, when I really understand qualifications. And I say 12 times because we're all going to do it. You're going to get that lead that calls you and you're like, damn, these people are hot. It's 800,000 and oh my Lord, it's available. It's first day on the market.
Right.
All right. Thank you all for indulging in my questions and shit.
Oh, that's great. Do you guys want to take a quick break, or you want to power through?
You want to take a 5-minute break?
5-minute break?
5-minute bio break. If you don't mind, I'm going to share I'm going to play it because it rang with me and it worked. I'm going to play Emma Swift's song from yesterday. And Emily is, would you say you're repping this artist? Yeah?
Love it.
Yeah, I'm her manager.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to
Thanks
play
for
that. For our, how about it's 4 minutes and 36 seconds, so that'll be our bio break.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Back in a flash. I got to make a call.
Rock and roll. Or folk, I prefer it.
And your father to your sister, he explained. That you're tired of yourself, your reputation. Won't you come see me, sweet Jane? Won't you come see me, sweet Jane? Now when all our ladies want back to their head, and the smell of their roses does not remain, and all of your children start to resent you. Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Now when all the clowns that you have commissioned have died in battle or in vain, and you say all this repetition, won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? When all of your advisors
Well, they're kids, so I don't think I have any kid-friendly or kid-fun.
at your feet, convince you of your pain, trying to prove that your conclusion should be more justice. Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Now when all of the bandits that you turn your other cheek to all lay down their bandanas and complain, hey, you want somebody you don't have to speak to. Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Won't you come see me, Queen Jane?
Put in the chat and share that that link and video for that artist that Emily represents, named Emma. It's pretty awesome.
I'll bet. Let's see.
Sometimes forget to turn off my notifications on my computer. In the top right, it's like, oh, that ding is miserable.
All right. So I think we'll be able to actually finish the contracts portion before Connie and Roger get on. If that works. You're muted, Colin.
Yes, or at least a good portion of it.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Wow. Which screen am I sharing? Okay. Make sure my do not disturb is on because my friends are crazy. Okay. All right. So we're going to just kind of go through these. We're not going to go line by line. That'll be your homework for tonight. So we're just going to give you kind of an overview of what these documents mean, kind of why they're important. So this one would be your the buyer's rep agreement. This kind of makes you and your client Facebook official. If you're dealing with millennials or married in a sense, this is essentially your employment contract to them and their agreement to work with you. So obviously some of this stuff is self-explanatory. Just put their name, address, village, all that good stuff. On section 2, this is where you can put in what they're looking for. If you have like done the questionnaire or like Colin has a Google form, I also use Google Forms. It's really nice because it gives you an electronic copy of it and it's like automatically saved. And so you can fill that information there. It's not make or break if that information is not in there, in my opinion, because it can change. You know, they can decide to look in a different part of town or different criteria. But if you want to put that in there, that's where you would put that. And then it kind of goes down the client's duties. Just remind them, you know, when they're looking at redfin.com or Zillow or any of the major websites, do not request a tour through there. Do not request more information through there. Make sure that they know to just send you a text with the address or the property because that's when they will accidentally get another realtor involved. And then that can be super fun, especially if they go out and look at the house without you and not tell you and not tell that realtor. So just kind of on the front end, explain to them what that process looks like. Line 36, section E. This is where you're going to want to put your compensation. You know, at Village, we go for 3%. There's no standard rate for commission, as y'all learned in real estate school. But here at Village, we expect a 3% commission on the buy side and same on the sell side. So you would put 3% there. What that block means, though, is if you're looking at a house and they have it listed in the MLS for 2.5%, your client, if you were to enforce this, would be responsible for making up the extra 0.5% for the commission. You know, that's kind of up to you if you want to enforce that. A lot of times that does not happen, and you know that's between you and your client. If they're doing a VA loan, for example, and that's paying a 2.5% commission, you cannot charge the extra 0.5% because VA loans do not allow the veteran to pay any commissions. So it's kind of like a unique situation. But this is where you would put 3% in or whatever that fee is there. This is important because if they buy a for sale by owner that's not offering a commission and they are willing to pay your commission, you have already have it spelled out in this block. If they lease a property, you know, maybe have that conversation with them on what you would charge for a lease to find them something to rent. Let's see, on section F, the carryover clause, what this means is, let's say Colin is my client and we find the perfect house. It's awesome. And then Colin's trying to be a little sneaky devil like she is, and decides she's going to fire me as her realtor and then reach out to the listing agent and say, hey, I got rid of my realtor. Could we work out like a special deal because you don't have to pay a commission? To the buyer's agent, which is a whole nother conversation because they think that means the listing agent doesn't get the whole fee. So this essentially protects you from that happening. So I always put 45 days, like a month and a half. And that means if Colin were to go to the seller, buy the property, I find out about it, I can sue them for my commission because I was the reason they found that property and I was the one that showed it to them. So that's what that means. Now, if Colin decides not to use me and hires Teddy, and they enter in to a buyer's rep agreement, the carryover clause is voided because now she has representation with somebody else. So this really only happens if they do not have an agent or they buy after the fact. Yes, Zach.
Yeah, Zach.
I was just curious. I mean, I've shown some clients a house. They made an offer. It had a contingency in it, and so long story short, like it fell through. Do I need to get them to sign a brand new buyer's agreement? Even though that house went through? Okay. I was just making sure.
Yeah. So up on line 11 and 12, it would terminate. So if you do like a 6-month buyer's agreement, then even though that contract fell through, that offer didn't work, as long as you still have more time left, then you're covered. So you're fine.
There is a very rare instance where sometimes people that don't want to sign a buyer's rep as a blanket form will have you put in a buyer's rep for one specific address. Mm-hmm. Like I'm seeing this more frequently, is that people are getting skittish about buyer's agreements. And so they'll say, it's sort of like their test drive with you. And so you may have a buyer, and this is typically attorneys that do this, and engineers. Not that we're stereotyping anybody, but I'm just saying there's certain people that have a harder time sometimes getting around these. And they will sometimes ask that you sign a buyer rep just to show them one property or engage in one property. And at that point, that buyer's rep would be only for that one property, but that is unusual. It's not common. Typically, your buyer's rep is going to be anything you guys are going to be looking at for a certain period of time. So I just want to make that distinction that there is a very rare instance where your scenario where you'd need a new buyer's rep would be, it does exist, but it's highly unlikely that you will have to do that.
That's what I was kind of worried about. So like, for example, I don't want to skip ahead. I know we got to be able to use VMint. If I was to just put up, if they found another house they want to buy, can I just use my old buyer's rep from the original TAR form and just export as PDF and then pull it in there?
Yeah, there's even a section in Transaction Desk where if you created your file for the purchase of this particular property, so you've got a file in Transaction Desk with this address of 123 Elm Street, and then they want to buy another one, so then they want to buy 456 Maple. You can go and into the 123 Elm Street transaction folder and click on the buyer's rep agreement and say move to another transaction, and you can pull that over.
Perfect.
So you don't have to get all that stuff re-signed, and your buyers will appreciate not having to re-sign things they've already done as well. So by all means, yeah.
Perfect.
And disclosures as well. Your trusted service provider's disclosure, there's no need to have to sign that again because it's not tied to a single property. It's just showing that you've made that disclosure.
Great. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah. Investors will do that as well. So I work with some investors that don't necessarily work with other realtors, but they do buy property directly from homeowners. So in theory, if they were under this agreement and they bought a property, even though it was without me and I was not involved, they would owe me a commission because we are exclusive. So it means whatever real estate transaction you do, you owe me a commission. So we will put, in special steps or at the top, this agreement is for properties that I send to them or something like that. Just make sure you trust your investor. Okay, so agency definitions. Broker would mean the firm or Colin as the principal broker at Village, or Tyler in East, or Angela, Karen, and Franklin. We practice designated agency at Village, meaning we designate, even though Colin has never met your client, technically it is Colin's client, but she designates you as their representative, which you may recall that from real estate school. Facilitator, we do practice that when you're dealing with either an unrepresented seller or something like that. You would just facilitate the transaction. I always like to say don't go to facilitator unless you absolutely have to, because you're already signed with someone looking out for their best interest, and then to facilitate, sometimes it can be hard. So that, my response to that would be that's like last resort, but it does happen a lot. Dual agency we don't do. It's like having the same divorce attorney. Adverse facts. obviously those are things that if you can see you need to disclose, or if you know of any issues, disclose those. And then confidentiality, whatever your clients tell you, don't divulge that information. Duties owed to all parties, that will be, as a real estate agent or realtor, you have to act this way to everybody, 1 through 7. But then the next 3, when they are a client, they have special privileges, obviously, because you're in a fiduciary responsibility or fiduciary relationship with them. So obviously you have to obey all lawful instructions. You have to be loyal, look out for their interests. That also means if you're looking at the MLS and there's properties with 2.5% commission, 1% commission, whatever the commission is, you do not preface the ones that pay you more over the ones that do not. So just make sure that you're not doing that. I know it's like, we just see that, whatever that number is, we calculate the commissions, but you have to look out for their best interests, get them the best deal regardless of where you're getting paid.
Can I pipe in one quick thing there? Back onto facilitator. And this may not happen right away. And when it does, we'll be here to sort of help you. But if you have an unrepresented party, the form Working with a Real Estate Professional has the 1 through 7 outlined, which is your duties to all customers, even if it defines the difference between being a customer and an agency agreement. So just keep that in mind, that when you're using that Working with a Real Estate Professional form, it goes through 1 through 7, which is your duties to everyone.
Right. Okay, so this will be where your name goes in this blank line 149. You're designated to be their agent. A lot of this is just, super fun realtor, or not realtor, but lawyer jargon. It's important for you to know, but you don't really have to read everything line by line. You can if you want to, but you need to know what this agreement says. Talks about earnest money, the limitations. Definitely highlight this part. I say that, we know a lot about a lot of stuff, but our lane is real estate. So although I might know stuff about contracting, termites, radon, whatever, you need to get a professional opinion on those, because if you are the professional and tell them their AC unit is fine and then it breaks the day after closing, they're going to be coming at you wanting a new HVAC because you told them it was okay. So just make sure that you are the source of the source, and you are putting them in contact with people that can give them the professional opinion.
When you kind of like broach that subject, people will ask you those things. I generally just say like, guys, I'm not an expert. I have some like very broad advice, but you need to consult somebody else. Or, and I try to recommend, I was like, I know these people, but you're welcome to just, Google works real well. So does Yelp. You're welcome to check them out.
Well, and that's another reason we're, rebuilding the referral database, is so that when they ask you, hey, do you think this foundation is sound? And you can give them a list of 3 structural engineers. You are not an engineer, and it's best left to the professionals. And so that's you being the source of the source and it doesn't make you look weak that you don't know the answer to everything. And I think that sometimes we feel like, oh, we need to know the answer to everything. But what it does is not only is it the liability issue, but, you're also showing that, real estate is what I know. And it's like calling an electrician to come and fix a plumbing leak. Right. We've got to get them pointed to the right direction, to the right people, and we can help them with that.
Yep. And they will appreciate it. Just say, hey, look, I don't want to lie to you, so let's get an HVAC person on the line. Let's, would you like a structural report? Those are $500. In this situation, you might need it. If it's, in my experience, but don't be afraid to say you don't know, because I think they will appreciate that. Or no, I know they will appreciate that. Let's see. So that kind of breaks down some of that information, goes into just super fun legal stuff. Fair housing, don't violate it. You'll have super fun in jail. As realtors, we do not discriminate against. The only difference here, or can anybody tell me, on line 223, letter E, what are the classes that at the federal level, well, I guess, did this change? No, it did not change. What is not protected at the federal level that is in this paragraph? Do y'all know?
Isn't one of them age? Because like it's like at 65, there's that special classification. I can't remember.
It's not age. It is the last two: sexual orientation or gender identity. So NAR adopted those several years ago, and they tried to get those added to the 7 protected classes. It's not been passed. I don't have faith that it'll be passed anytime soon, but the Supreme Court did rule that sex does encompass sexual orientation and gender identity as far as discriminating against employers or employers discriminating against potential employees. But under fair housing, you can definitely discriminate against gay and trans people, as backwards as that sounds, and it does happen. So just be familiar with that and know that as a realtor, you are held to a higher standard. So you cannot discriminate against those. So that is the buyer's rep agreement. That's where you would put in special steps if you had anything as far as like Colin was mentioning, this only applies to 123 Main Street or whatever property.
I have a couple questions. So our name will never be on that contract. It's always going to be Colin or one of the managing brokers. Is that correct?
No, so it'll say Village Firm / broker of, we'll say Village right here, just Village Real Estate. And then your name is down here when it said designated agent. So appointment of designated agent, that would be your name right there.
Okay. And then for the commission, so if it's listed as 2.5 in the MLS and Village requires us to do 3, the buyer is going to have to bring extra money at closing to cover the 0.5%. Is that correct?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
That is really depending on you enforcing that. If you have 3% in your buyer's rep agreement and you want to say, hey, this property is only offering 2, you have signed up for 3, there will be an additional charge at closing for X amount. You can do that. You're not required to do that. But if it's anything less than 2.5%, I would say you need to have that conversation with your client.
Okay.
Because this is a job. This is not a hobby. This is not something we do for fun. We do this to pay our bills. So, but yes. All right. Confirmation of age. Oh, yeah. Do you have another question?
No, thank you.
Confirmation of agency. This just kind of says who's representing who on each side. So transactional broker or facilitator, we do that. Buyer is unrepresented. That would be if you have a listing and somebody comes along without an agent. Agent for the buyer, we do not do, and we do not do disclosed dual agent. This form, you will most definitely have designated agent for the buyer, but there will be a situation where you have either facilitator or unrepresented.
Could you talk about maybe the difference between the agent and designated agent? I mean, I know that when we sign these agreements, to click designated agent, but that's kind of about like the extent of my knowledge about that I just know not to click the other one.
Yeah, agent isn't really worth the paper it's signed on, in my opinion. It's just kind of like a free-for-all. Like, I could be all of your agent, but you could also go to anybody you want to, and they could also be your agent. So we just do designated agent, meaning you have an exclusive agent that you work with, if that makes sense.
I got you.
Kind of like having 2 listings. It's like having a listing with like 3 signs in the yard, kind of like Village and Parks.
I got you.
That doesn't really make sense. Authorization and waivers. So this one you will only use if the property is a rehab property or new construction. And the reasoning behind that is Village has a lot of developers and builders and rehabbers, which is awesome. But Village, in theory, did not build or rehab that property. So pretty much you're not going to come back and sue us if there's issues with your property that someone else built or rehabbed. So that's just kind of an extra layer of protection. The other items are really for listings. So you'll use this on listings mainly for the fact, let's say you want to go ahead and get your listing agreement signed, but they don't want to list it for a couple weeks because they want to do, updated carpet, paint, or what have you. this waives the 48-hour requirement that you put it in the MLS right away. I'm not going to go through clear cooperation right now because then we'll be here all day. But this does not really apply to coming soon. This is just to waive the requirement to put it in the MLS. Let's see what else. Trusted service providers. This was in the buyer's presentation, but essentially we work with Rudy Title and F&B Mortgage. We have a working relationship with them that we need to disclose. And then it also touches on wire fraud warning. Obviously, wire fraud is really rampant in our industry, so never send wiring instructions. That's the title company's job. Just advise them if they ever get wiring instructions to definitely call the number. Google the title company, call the number on Google, and then verify the instructions on there. A lot of people don't realize this, but the CD, which is the closing disclosure that we all love to hate, this gives you the ability to review it. So if you're working with a lender that you don't usually work with, and they say they can't send you the closing disclosure, you can send them this form and let them know the client has opted to allow you to see that information. So please send it to me for review if you want to do that. That's what that means. Working with a real estate professional. This is the form that Colin touched on earlier. If you do have an unrepresented party, this is what they have to sign, because that shows them that, you know, we have to act in good faith with 1 through 7. But as a realtor that has a relationship with a client, they get 8, 9, and 10. But when you're explaining this, just make sure they know that that doesn't mean you're not going to lie to them and kind of deceive them. It just means that you have a responsibility to get the best for your client, even though that they're unrepresented. Let's see. Agreement to show property. Okay, so this is very, very important. If you're working with a buyer that finds an off-market property or a for sale by owner, the reason why this is important is, let's say Zach's selling his for sale by owner, and I call him and I say, hey, I have a client that's interested. Would you be willing to pay a commission? I charge 3% to my clients for that. Is that something you'd be willing to pay? Zach says yes. We're like, hallelujah. We go to the property. They love it. And then we go to write an offer. Offer comes in, full price, whatever, great offer. The seller then decides, you know what? I'm only going to pay a 2% commission. Because your duty is to your client and you have to look out for their best interest. And if you put in the commission, essentially the commission is what's holding up the deal, you'll be in trouble. So this form, what this does, before you even show the property, you send this to the seller, the unrepresented client, the unrepresented party, and you say, I have to, my office requires, since you are for sale by owner or off-market property, we have to have an agreement to show your property since it's not listed. There's a lot of details spelled out. On price, you can put to be determined or whatever they're like offering, I guess, not offering, but whatever it's listed at. But the biggest component is section 3, where you would put your 3% in. So this means when you send over the offer, you put this as an exhibit and addenda, agreement to show property, and that locks them into paying you what they had previously agreed to pay. So this is really important when you're dealing with a property that's not listed with another realtor. And then it kind of goes through some other, you know, super fun legal stuff. Okay, so this is getting a little into contracts, but we wanted to touch on the repair replace proposal. So this is when you have got a buyer under contract and you are with the repair component and you're asking for items to be repaired. This is the form you use. You do not put it on an amendment. You put it on a proposal and you send it over. You have to be very specific about what you want them to do. So do not send them the inspection report. I repeat, do not send them the inspection report unless they ask for it. Reasoning is because you don't own that inspection report. The buyer does, and they have an agreement with the home inspection company to have that report. And the second reason is if you're the listing agent and you get the inspection report and you open it, you are now required by law to disclose everything that's in that report to any buyer that comes along if this deal does not work out. Some sellers want to see it, and that's on them. You just are very blunt in your email saying, per your request, here's the full inspection report. But as a buyer's agent, never send it unless they request it. You can send pictures from it. So like if it's a weird repair or there's 17 windows or something crazy and you need a picture to specify what that repair is, you can send supporting documents, but never send the full report unless they want it.
Could you touch on, like, if it's a brand new build in terms of inspection?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so every builder is a little different. So you just kind of ask the listing agent, hey, do you want the full report? Do you want the summary? I'm working with a new construction deal right now, and since it's new, we send the full report and we expect everything to be fixed because it's brand new. So yeah, just kind of feel the agent out and say, what is your process? Do we need to put it on a proposal? Will the home inspection report work? Do you need that before the blue tape walkthrough? Do you need it at the blue tape walkthrough? So you're just going to want to see what their process is because every builder is a little different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, let's see. This is the amendment. So once I send my proposal over to Colin, and she says, okay, cool. We'll do everything on here. Put it on the amendment. The person sending the proposal puts it on the amendment. So if I sent Colin a proposal and she responded back with another proposal and we said, okay, we're cool with that, Colin would put it on the amendment. That's important because you want to make sure the wording is right. You don't want them to sneak in a repair when it should have been a replace. Not that anybody would do that, but it has happened. But also that's just the process because you're proposing these repairs, then you will put them on the amendment, you will sign, and you will send for them to sign after that. There have been situations where you have a buyer, you send over the proposal, and they say, great, we'll fix everything. And then your buyer says, you know what, I've changed my mind. I don't want this property. Because you're in resolution period, and because it was a proposal and not amendment, contractually, they have the ability to walk or not resolve repairs. Now, that's going to be a super fun conversation to have because the seller has then agreed already, hey, I will fix all these things. But the buyer does have the ability to change their mind because maybe they were okay with a structural repair yesterday. Does not mean they're going to be okay with it today. So my advice is to if everybody's okay with it, get it signed ASAP. Because then once everybody signs this amendment, the inspection resolution period has ended and you are moving on forward.
Should we touch on how the timeline for resolution starts?
Yes. So if you have a 10-day inspection period and you're diligent, you get your inspection ordered, it's day 2, you get the report back and you're ready to send over your repairs on day 5. As soon as you send over the proposal, that is the end of your inspection period. There's no more, well, termite inspection is tomorrow. No, as soon as it goes over to the seller, the resolution period begins. So if I sent Colin my proposal today and we have a 5-day resolution period, tomorrow would be day 1 of the resolution period. So don't get a little eager. Like if you're still waiting on a radon result test or the termites to come back, once you send over that proposal and radon's at 15 and there's an infestation of termites, if the proposal has already gone over, then you're going to be paying for some termites and a radon mitigation machine. So just be mindful of that if you're doing multiple inspections. Now, if I send a proposal over to Colin and she says, we'll give you $5,000 for all these repairs, I say, okay, that's fine. We need to know where you got 5,000. Is that just like an arbitrary number? And if you did just say, hey, we'll give you $5,000 and there's no like methodology, I guess, behind it, I will say, okay, we're open to accepting money in lieu of repairs, but we would like for our contractor to come out tomorrow to see if this is sufficient, or we need to get the HVAC out there to see if it's sufficient. They don't really have to agree, but I would press that for your client, because if you say this is a great number and it comes back costing $10,000 instead of $5,000, they're going to ask you why you told them they should accept the $5,000. So
what happens if we can't agree?
The contract terminates at the end of the resolution period. The way it is set up is if we're on day 2 and it is clear that one side is not going to resolve. You can go ahead if everybody is in agreement and withdraw the contract, send over a notification, send over earnest money release. You don't have to. The way it's written is you're supposed to complete resolution. At the end of resolution, if there is no agreement, the contract automatically terminates and the buyer gets their earnest money back. But why wait 5 days if you know on day 2 it's not going to work out? You can go ahead and cancel the agreement. It's just kind of whatever you feel more comfortable with at that time.
This is where you're on RealTrax and you look at the kind of history of the property and it says under contract inspection and then it went live again.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can ask 100% the other agent, hey, I saw 123 Main Street went under contract either for financing or inspection, because I never put inspection. I'll always put financing, even if it is inspection. What happened? Did the appraisal come back short, or what were the repairs they requested? The agent is supposed to disclose that information because it is a known, it's a known defect in the property. So they're supposed to advise you what those things were. Get a home inspection. This is important if your client says they don't want a home inspection or anything, they don't want a radon test. You may want to get this signed just as kind of a CYA, like, hey, these inspections are important, but you're choosing not to get them. Please sign this document. You know, it's not required by compliance. You know, Colin, I've personally never gotten this form. I feel like used to be required years ago for FHA buyers when they did not get a home inspection. But it would just be a CYA if you would like to say, hey, I'm getting nervous that this house needs a home inspection. You don't want one. Here's the form saying I told you it was important.
Yeah, I think that's really, I would not, it's not required for every transaction. Obviously, it's not part of compliance, but especially if somebody is saying they don't want an inspection, then I want you to have this signed because it's a big CYA.
Yeah. I personally never ask my clients if they want a radon test. I don't know where that falls under, if that's good or bad, but they're usually like $150, which are not cheap. But radon, if you don't know, is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. You cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, you do not know it's there, and it is really prevalent in Davidson County, specifically Davidson and Montgomery, which is Clarksville. If you look on the EPA's website, it is all red. But Middle Tennessee as a whole does have higher levels of radon. Like, I'm from Memphis. We didn't have radon in Memphis. I don't know what radon was. We didn't have crawl spaces in Memphis, really. So in Nashville, I guess it has to do with the rock. I don't know, but we have a lot of it here. When it rains, oddly enough, there's usually an uptick in radon levels being higher. I guess it has something to do with, I don't know, science. I don't know reasoning why, but when we had a bunch of rain, I guess last year, it was like rained all the time. All of my radon tests came back high. So just know that it's important. Most of the time, if you just say, hey, do you want a radon test? They're not going to know what that means. Tell them, because the last thing you want to do is sell somebody a house. Either you didn't ask them what radon was, or you didn't ask them if they wanted a radon test, or you didn't explain it. And then you see on Facebook in a couple of years, they got lung cancer, they got breast cancer. Like, I don't want that on my show. I don't want to know that. I could have saved them from that. So that's just my little disclaimer on radon. Let's see. Disclaimer is not required by compliance right now. This form is important because, kind of like Zach was saying, like, it kind of goes down the process of like, hey, we know real estate. We know a lot of stuff about structural components, roofs, home inspectors, you know, termites, all this stuff. We know a lot of stuff about this, but we're not professionals. So this is just saying you need to get higher. So it's a CYA for you, essentially. So you can get this document signed as well. Colin, are we bringing this back to compliance or not right now? You're muted.
I'm sorry, what are we bringing back to compliance?
I'll be bringing back the disclaimer notice to compliance.
Not currently, but I'd like to for 2021.
I think it might be good to have.
Yeah, I for 2021, I think we should plan on it, but currently, no.
All my contracts.
I was gonna say, let's just pretend it's part of compliance, even though technically it's not.
Zach, do you get it signed?
Yeah, I've got them. I mean, my 3 contracts that I have right now, they're all signed.
Yeah.
That was on Brent's recommendation.
Good. That's what I want you guys to be doing. They took it off last year because they thought it was repetitive from the purchase and sale agreement, but I think an extra layer that we need.
Brent was telling me something about, I think that Lee was touching on earlier. My sellers, because it's a new build, they said they wanted that they didn't feel like they needed an inspection. And I said, I recommend you get one, but if you want to waive it, you have the right to do that. So he said I needed a specific form for that. Is that what you're talking about up here?
To get a home inspection form, you could have them sign that saying they waived the home inspection.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because like, he was like, well, my client was like, oh, well, if the buyers come back with their inspection and it's, not favorable, we'll get a home inspection. I'm like, I don't think it works that way, man. I had to explain to him, like, you need to get an inspection before they do.
It's really important on new construction because builders are human. They miss things. Unfortunately, they cut corners too. Or maybe their guys forgot to connect this pipe in the crawl space. Or I had one house in Green Hills. I was so excited. It was like $800,000. We do the home inspection. They have plugged in their giant gas range into an extension cord and plugged it into the wall. Have we not had a home inspection, we never would have found that. And it voided the warranty on the range because it cannot be in a extension cord. So I use that example every time because you just don't know what they're going to not do either on purpose or by mistake. So that's kind of my spiel. And the builder typically fixes everything in it anyway because they'll have to do it at the warranty point. So, okay. So this sheet personally I don't like to give estimated closing costs for buyers because there are loan fees you don't know about. There could be other things that you're just not aware of. So my suggestion is to work with a lender that doesn't give you like a percentage range, meaning, hey, we want to put an offer on a property. We need to know how much closing costs to ask for because they don't have that. They only have their down payment. Oh yeah, just put 3% down. Well, that is easy for them to say. But if you're looking at multiple offers and maybe everybody's asking for closing costs and you put down 3%, but it's only really going to cost your client 2% closing costs and someone else has an exact number, you could lose. Or your offer doesn't look as strong because there's still this like open-ended, like, could it be 3%? Could it be 2%? So work with a lender that will not be lazy, first thing, and will log the numbers in their little computer program that generates what the costs are going to be for closing. If you want to use this, that's fine. Just make sure that you know the numbers are very close to being correct, because if you tell them their closing costs are $5,000 and they end up being $8,000 and they don't have the extra money, you're going to be coming off some commission to pay for what you told them was not right. So that's my disclaimer on that. And I think that ties us up. I guess we could show the base commission form, Colin. Let me pull that up really fast.
Are all these forms filled out electronically?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Where's my... Oh.
They're all on Transaction Desk, and we'll be looking at Transaction Desk a little bit later.
Okay, thanks.
So the base commission is essentially, there's a transaction fee, AKA base commission fee, essentially, of $150 that is charged to you on every client and every sale that you have. If you ever look at the settlement statement for any other companies, you will notice that they are charging a base commission of like $4.95, $5.95, so you can pay the $150, or you can pass the fee on to your client. Some people are very passionate about, like, I'm not going to do that, I'll pay the $150. That's your decision. I charge $3.95 on every file that I do. So Village would essentially take out the 150 and then you make the extra $245 or whatever the difference is. So it's just a way for you to add more money to your bottom line, and we're not out of line with the market because people are charging much more than that.
I have a question. This may be what you just said. I watched this from May when y'all did this and heard y'all talk about this. Do y'all just come up with your own form for that, or is that what you just said? I may have zoned for a minute.
We have one right here.
Say that again.
We have one under the Village folder in transaction desk.
Okay.
You'll just use the base commission and disclosure agreement,
Uh-huh.
and you'll fill it out.
Oh,
and
you can make it what you want it. Okay.
Got it. And they can either pay you up front or they can pay you at the closing table.
So like on some of mine, I did like 150 up front, and then 50, and then I did like 50. I've only charged 200 on these first couple. I tell people that I typically try to use that towards signs and marketing and things like that. I try to explain to them that this money is not, it's not like you're just like giving me money and I'm going to like Urban Grub. It's, it's first the transaction fee and then, $50 towards like, signs and like the things that Village Assist makes for like my open houses and things like that. I try to explain to them that I'm not just like over there like joyriding with their money. I'm not going to Tunica.
Hey, Lee, while you're in transaction desk, can you show them where to find the inform tool?
Maybe.
I can do it if you want.
Maybe. Will you pull that up? Because I didn't even know about that until I came to Village. So I'm going to let you drive on that.
Okay.
But this is the form. This is the base commission form. So you would put a total number here. So on Zach's example, you would do 200, 150, and 50. I think the more you go into detail on this fee, essentially what it is, the more apt you're going to get pushback from it. So what I say is Village charges a flat base commission on all their transactions. So there will be a $395 charge at settlement period, actually. I don't go into a lot of detail because then they start thinking they can negotiate you down or they don't want to pay it. So I think less is more is approach is, hey, Village charges a flat fee on all transactions. So you'll just pay this when you close. And most people, I would say 99% of the time, would go, okay. And then that's it.
And what's it going rate like for someone new, or like you said, they don't really know if you're new or not new. They might not. So you charge $395. What do a lot of people charge?
$495, $200, $300. Some people just charge the $150. They don't make any additional. This is a job. So like when you get a new cell phone, what do you pay? An upgrade fee. When you get Comcast service, what do you pay? An activation fee. This is literally just giving you money towards your bottom line for your business. So, if you charge everybody a transaction fee on every file, that's your monthly $125. That's, that is encompassing, maybe you designate that for a private office. You're trying to come up ways to make money because the commission dollars can only go so far. So this is just another way for you to add more money to your bottom line for your business, in my opinion.
Okay, we're running out of time before Connie and Roger jump in. Can I go to the inform tool real quick? Okay, so you're in Tennessee Realtors and you go under members, and this is where you find transaction desk, the inform tool. So say it's 9 o'clock at night. What? Okay, well, I'm really sorry about that. Okay, well, basically when it comes back, which I'm sure it will, I can't believe that they have disabled it. Any of the TAR forms, not the Village forms, but any of the TAR forms, you can hover over an area of the TAR form, and it will have a little pop-up window that explains to you what's supposed to go in that blank. So if you're, feeling panicked at 11 o'clock at night and you're not going to be able to get a hold of a broker or anything, it's a great way to sort of help you shepherd through, but I don't know why they've taken it down. It was there not that long ago.
It's weird.
But anyway, so
Also, just keep like either your first executed contract. If you bought a house, keep that contract handy. Whenever you go through the contract class, keep that as your guide. So like when you like who pays title, I don't know. Let me look at this seller pays title. Like things that you can't really remember. Now, once you do a contract 10 times, you're going to do it with your eyes closed. You're just going to know where to click, bam, bam, bam. But at the beginning, keep a contract that's completely executed handy so you know what to put in what blank, because the majority of the time, all the contracts are the same. So you'll always ask seller to pay title unless it's a specific example. So, I would just keep that handy. That way you're not trying to get a hold of somebody and you're like, oh my God, what is going this blank? Oh, let me pull up this contract we went over in class. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the same thing you would put in your contract anyway. And we got Connie Eddie in the house.
Whoops, I was muted. Hey, yeah, thank you. All right, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go right ahead. Connie and everybody, FB Morgan.
Let's see. Hello. Hey, I don't know if Roger's on yet. Roger? No? He might be zooming from his car, so he'll join us. Hello, everybody. Lee and Colin had asked us to join and just kind of talk to you guys about just pre-qual letters versus pre-approval letters, things like that. Did you guys get the material that we sent? Yes? No? I think you put it in your handouts.
It's in their agent folder, but I can put it up on the screen if you like, Connie.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yep. All right, hang on. Let me pull it up.
You were way better at this technical stuff than me, so.
JumpStart 2020, day 2. Okay.
Cool. All right. For those of you who don't know us, that's me and Roger. Okay, so yeah, we're going to talk about pre-qual letters versus pre-approval, the main differences, why they matter, just, about the current climate and how important it is to have these pre-approval letters. And then we'll go into the FHA addendum and some of the THDA changes, okay? Can I manipulate this here, move it around? Or Colin, do you need to move it?
I think I have to move it because I'm the one sharing it.
Okay,
So
you just go to the next screen.
Tell me next, please, and I'll
next,
get
please. All right, so when we first talk with your clients, we're going to take an application and just get their basic information, for the application. So, pull credit, and we'll get their information on what their job history, the type of work that they do, income, and what their debts are. And we can provide a pre-qual letter at that point based on that verbal information. So, if they're looking for a particular home, price range, we can say, okay, in this price range, you're approved based on what we have in our system, based on, again, on looking at their credit, and then verbally giving us, their income, things like that. So then we can provide a pre-qual letter for you, for you to go ahead and, write that offer. Okay, next screen. The difference with a pre-approval letter is at that point, we've actually looked at their income, we've verified, the documentation for their income and their assets. If they're self-employed, we've looked at their tax returns, which is so important because on self-employed, I mean, people write off, just as much as you can to minimize your taxes. So, on a self-employed person, we really want to look at those tax returns, but we can provide a pre-approval letter that's really much stronger. And it shows to that seller, that we've actually verified their income and and that it's sufficient for their approval. We've verified their assets and that's sufficient for closing, for their funds to close. So again, really strengthening that approval letter, which I think is so important in today's environment. Homes are lasting like 2 seconds on the market. So if you're in a competitive offer situation, then I think it's just really critical to have as strong of a pre-approval letter as possible. So again, that's kind of the difference between a pre-qual versus a pre-approval. We really encourage people as soon as they're making an application to try to send us that documentation as quickly as possible. And I think it's just good for the agents to sort of be on board with that and just encourage your buyers, whoever they're working with, whatever lender they're working with, send that documentation, because there's nothing worse than us getting something and then it doesn't pan out to maybe we see something on the tax returns or in their pay stubs that doesn't support that. Maybe they're trying to get an approval based on they have a lot of commission or bonus, so we have to actually average that over a 2-year period. So those are things that you don't want to be caught off guard and all of a sudden 2 weeks into the loan we get that documentation and now they're not approved. So again, just having that on the front end and being able to provide a strong approval letter is critical for the process, but also I think really strengthens, having that, just a better footing when you're making an offer. So if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. So again, this is just a little overview here. What the income documentation, where we've actually just, gone through and done it, verbally, or actually having the evidence and being able to provide that pre-approval. Okay. Next, please. All right. The VA FHA loan addendum. This is, part of your contract. Obviously on a VA or FHA loan, we have to have this, and you have these fields that you have to fill in. And we always get a lot of questions from agents about how to fill this in. Okay, so the funding fee under line 24, number 4, the funding fee, that's only going to be on a VA loan. Okay, and typically, it's always financed in. So usually I don't know that we've ever had a VA loan that we've done where the seller has paid it. I suppose that is an option. Just so you know, the funding fee of somebody's their first use of a VA loan, the funding fee is pretty significant, especially if they're putting 0 down. It can be 3%. So on a $300,000 loan amount, you're talking over $9,000, almost $10,000. It's huge. So that's typically just financed into the loan. So on that particular line, funding fee, if applicable, you can just say in full at closing by the buyer. The buyer's going to be paying that. Again, they're going to be financing it into the loan. The public water or public sewer systems. So this rarely comes up. But if the property is eligible, if it's accessible for public water or sewer, then on a FHA or VA, then they actually want that property to be connected. Okay, if there's sewer available but it's on a septic system, they generally want to have that actually connected, which can be very expensive. But there are some fees. If it exceeds like a certain amount, I think it's like over 3%, then they don't have to do it. But if it is a minimal cost, again, I think in 23 years that I've done this, I've maybe had this come up once where it's actually been an issue. Because typically the properties are always on sewer if it's available. If it's not, they're on septic, it's no big deal if the sewer is not available. Oh, and I'm sorry, I skipped a screen up at the top, the appraised value. So the property appraised value on that, that area there, you're gonna put the sales price, so whatever they're offering, the sales price, because on a VA or FHA loan, if the property does not appraise for the amount, then the buyer can walk and get their earnest money back. So you wanna put the sales price in there on that. Okay, and then the next screen is page 2 of this addendum. And number 8, where it says non-allowable settlement charges and closing costs, that is anything that's considered a non-allowable charge. So it's not what the seller's paying for closing costs. So if you're negotiating a contract and say you've written in the seller to pay $5,000 in closing costs, you actually wouldn't put that in this section. That is only addressing non-allowables. There are no non-allowable fees on the FHA loan, okay? So that doesn't even exist. For VA, and I can get you guys a list of the non-allowable fees, but it's like termite inspection, origination fees. There's some things that you were not able to charge a buyer on a VA loan. So I would say typically, maybe wouldn't exceed, say $1,000 or so, but each lender is different. Most lenders now know that there's non-allowable fees. And we can charge, we can actually charge an origination, not an underwriting fee. So we can put those non-allowable fees in that charge that is acceptable. And again, I would say it's really customary that that's how lenders handle that. So most of the time, you really don't even have to fill that in. However, if you're working with a lender that maybe doesn't handle it that way, just get with them and ask them what the non-allowable fees are that they're charging. And then it's either really up to the lender to have to pay them or the seller, because the buyer cannot pay those on a VA loan. Again, this is only going to impact any VA buyers that you have, not FHA. All right, because there are no non-allowable fees on FHA loans. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of confusing. Okay, what's our next screen? Oh, THDA. If you guys use down payment assistance, and if you've used any of the THDA loans in the past, they have completely changed it altogether. So in the past, THDA, you could do like 5% of the sales price, and it was 0 payment, 0 interest, just due on sales. So when people would sell the property, that's when they paid back the THDA loan. They've completely changed it. Now they also actually offer a conventional version. They've just rolled this out. In fact, they've only rolled it out to like a pilot lenders. We're one of those, thankfully, that are in that group. So, we're really pleased to be able to offer this immediately. So it's down payment and closing costs, but we can do that actually with a conventional loan. So our conventional first-time home buyer loans, buyer can buy up to 97%. So they only have to do 3% down. The conventional THDA, it's a lower interest rate. It's about 3.125, I think today. And but for a purchase price over $150,000, the buyer gets $7,500. So it's not the 5% anymore. It's $7,500 is the down payment assistance. If it's under $150,000, it drops to $6,000. So it's something that is probably going to give them, pretty much their down payment, not a lot left over for closing costs. So you may still have to negotiate their closing costs with, maybe the seller paying it. But they've dropped a lot of their fees that they were associated with the THDA loans, which is nice. Their rates are more competitive now. And they offer this option for conventional. So it's really nice if you've got somebody who needed down payment assistance. Previously you had to do an FHA loan. But this actually offers people that option, with the conventional. Now, on the conventional loan, the income limits are much, much lower than the THDA FHA loan. We're talking like, I mean, it still has to do with whatever county, so it is dependent on the county, but on the conventional, I'm gonna say it's around 64,000 is the income limit, but we can go off qualifying borrower, not household income. So if we can get maybe just the husband or just the wife, or one person approved and just have to use their income, then we can go off that person's qualifying income and not have to count the other spouse or partner or whoever, that anybody else that's living in the house. We don't have to use their income to qualify, which is nice on this one. Okay, you can go to the next screen, Colin.
Hello, Connie. Sorry to be late. I was on the phone with one of the village agents helping them.
Oh, hey, Roger's joined our Zoom. You here? Okay.
I'm here. I'm driving, but I hope you can hear me.
We're talking about the THDA and the conventional versus
Gotcha.
FHA options. Okay?
I was listening.
All right, cool. All right, so the benefits of the conventional 3% down programs gives them down payment assistance. You do not have to be a first-time home buyer. That's different than the FHA version. The MI on the conventional will drop off just like a regular conventional loan. So there's no upfront MI required, and it will have an MI cancellation once the buyer has that 20% equity position. They can have that removed, just like a regular conventional loan.
Can you tell them what MI is?
Yeah, sorry. So mortgage insurance is required for anybody that puts down less than 20%. So any buyer that's putting less than 20%, you've got to have that mortgage insurance. It's basically insurance that protects the lender against default. So it allows a buyer to put less than the 20% down, but they have to carry that mortgage insurance premium. But on a conventional loan, typically conventional versus FHA, the mortgage insurance is for the life of the loan. So even when they reach that 20% equity position, it will not be removed. It's for the entire 30-year period. A conventional loan, once there's enough equity in the home, that mortgage insurance can actually be removed altogether. So that's obviously one thing that's more favorable about a conventional loan. The rates are very competitive on that conventional. Again, income limits for the qualified borrower, not for household income. There are acquisition costs. So again, anytime that you get into somebody who's needing down payment assistance, make sure you talk to the lender and see, because it's going to change from county to county as far as the income limits that are required. So again, if somebody makes over that income limit, they're not going to be able to get that down payment assistance. And there are also acquisition cost limits. So, just make sure you check with them and make sure that they're buying within those means. Okay. On the conventional loan, we have to have a 660 score for the conventional product. Okay. Next one. The THDA FHA is 3.5% down, same kind of down payment assistance, $7,500 over $150,000, $6,000 under. They do have to repay that loan now, so there is going to be a payment associated with that down payment that they're getting. All right, but on the THDA FHA loans, the income restrictions are much higher. So it does go by household. So even if, say, one borrower is, the only person on the loan, we've got another co-borrower that's not on the loan, but they do have income coming in. We have to count that income even if they're not on the loan. So this is just on the FHA version for the THDA. However, it does allow the income, it's much higher. So it's $96,000 qualifying income for Davidson County and the surrounding counties, and up to $112,000 for a family of 3 or more. Okay. And on that one, we can actually go down to a 640 credit score to qualify. So, okay. Oh, and lastly, if you use First National Bank, Roger or I, for your transactions, we will pay your $150 base commission fee. So make sure you have, fill this out to where it's payable by your clients at closing. So we'll have that charge on the closing disclosure, but then we'll give a credit back and pay that for you. So just a way of us saying thank you for your business. I think that's it. Unless
Anyone
anybody-
have any questions for Connie and Roger?
If you charge more than 150, they ain't paying all of it. So
That's right.
They'll pay
Hey,
up to
but
the
we got your back on the 150 at least.
yes, which is great.
And then I think we have another screen, just, you know, and this again should be in your packet. So, you know, please give us a call. We're usually down here in the office. We'd love to meet with you and your clients and take care of you. Roger, you got anything to add?
No, I missed most of it. You know, the THDA program is one of my favorite programs. I probably get 3 out of 10 first-time home buyers into a home using THDA. And even with the changes, it's still really good. And probably another great thing about THDA is just last week they lowered their interest rate. THDA, I don't know if you know this because sometimes they don't. THDA sets the interest rate, and it is the same interest rate regardless of what lender they use, whether the lender is in another state or here. And it's now at 3.5%. And if it's a veteran, they have a program called Home of the Brave. And they can get a 0.5% reduction on that. So sometimes a veteran can combine a THDA with an VA loan and end up with a 3% interest rate with money to pay their closing costs on 100% financing. It's a really sweet little deal that a lot of loan officers don't explore enough. But it makes a much better deal for their loan officer or for their client. And Connie and I both know how to handle that all day long.
And the fact that it's conventional, that is amazing.
Isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah, because it really gives you more of a competitive edge now, being able to, you know, write an offer on a conventional loan and be able to get your buyer down payment assistance. So yeah, I think we're going to be doing quite a bit of that.
Veronica.
You had a question?
Yes. Do you guys have anybody there that deals with W-7 loans?
We actually can do those on our bank side. So First National Bank, we have the mortgage division, which is what Roger and I work for. But we also, because we're part of a bank, we do offer like some portfolio loans, and we have construction loans, we have home equity lines. So there's a whole world of other loans that we can offer as well. One of those, and we've had, you know, quite a bit of success with, is loans for people who don't have the, you know, that aren't U.S. citizens. So as long as they do have to have a social security number, and they still have to be able to pull a credit score of 640 or better. Typically on our portfolio loans, we're going to require 10% down. But yeah, we've closed several of those.
That's a good question. What about can you explain a little bit about the not rehab loan? What am I thinking? That you can do
like a renovation?
Renovation loan. Thank you.
No,
Yeah, it was in there somewhere. What, Roger, were you talking?
I was just saying, were you asking about the non-warrantable condo loan?
No, he was asking about the renovation loan.
The reno loan.
Yes. So if you're wanting to purchase a home, you've got a buyer who's wanting to purchase a home and renovate it, we can actually help them with that too. So they can purchase the house and get the money for renovations. Typically, they're going to need 15% into the transaction. So say they're buying a house for $200,000 and they need $100,000 to renovate the home. So we would actually do the loan based on a $300,000 amount. Okay, so we're giving them the renovation money. You do have to have 15% into it. The first draw is actually paying off the seller. So the seller walks away, they've got their money, and then the buyer has the funds available to them to start those renovations. So, I mean, there's a process to it. We have to have their contractor approved, things like that. And we have to see, you know, the plans and specs and have a budget for everything. So there's inspections along the way. So, you know, so they'll inspect as the property is being renovated, and they'll, you know, dole out the funds, you know, per inspection. So, but it's definitely something we can offer, which is a great option for people who are wanting to purchase a home and it's not everything they want it to be, you know. So and then to Roger's point, we have a non-warrantable condo loan. So if you've got people, so non-warrantable condo, that basically means it's a condo that doesn't meet Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines. And so there might be something about that condo that's making it, whether it's like the budget doesn't have the 10% reserves, or there's too many investors. So when we're approving someone to buy a condo, it's not just about the buyer that's getting approved. We actually have to approve the building that they're purchasing too. And if you ever see any listings out there that say that it has to be either cash or whatever on a condo, it's probably because it will not meet the regular conventional financing guidelines. So again, our bank has a non-warrantable, what they consider non-warrantable condo product for those developments that don't meet the criteria. So you can still do those.
Like short-term rental condo buildings, small short-term rentals. Stuff like that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much. So good to see your faces.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for letting me be late.
You're good.
Bye.
Safe travels.
Bye.
All right. Let's see. Well, I guess we're about lunchtime. Are we? Yeah. So we can go. Do y'all want to do a 30-minute lunch? Do you want to do an hour lunch? What are y'all thinking? Colin, what do we have budgeted? We have an hour budgeted, I guess. You're on mute.
Last time the group wanted to do a 30-minute lunch so that we could finish earlier. So it's, we'll put it to the vote. What does everybody else want to do? 30 minutes? Is that enough time for everybody to get recharged? Okay, we'll see you guys back here at noon.
Awesome.